Hi there, in this video we will go over AWS Elastic Beanstalk for the Certified Solution Architect exam. Now, why do developers use Elastic Beanstalk? Most developers are good at building applications using a variety of programming languages such as C++, Java, Node.js, or Python, and many other programming languages. However, what most developers do not like after building the application code is deploying the infrastructure by themselves, because that means they need to manage the following infrastructure requirements such as capacity provisioning, which is determining how many CPU cores, RAM, hard disk capacity, the kind of operating system, and networking bandwidth needed for the application. They need to figure out load balancing and how to balance out the HTTP requests from clients across to your servers. They also need to manage autoscaling, which is managing the application traffic whenever there's a spike in application traffic across servers, and then decreasing the servers once the application traffic spike reduces. And then finally, they also need to keep a track of the application health, such as tracking the input and output of an application based on key metrics. Deploying the infrastructure for an application is a very cumbersome task. So Elastic Beanstalk is a service provided by AWS. And what AWS does is it allows the client to simply manage the applications and the data, while AWS manages all the heavy lifting of all the other undifferentiated tasks which are not required for running a successful application. So with AWS Elastic Beanstalk, which is instead of an infrastructure as a service solution, it is a platform as a service solution. Client simply has to upload the application code to AWS, while AWS handles the heavy lifting of provisioning, autoscaling, load balancing, and application health monitoring. Now let's get a better overview of AWS Elastic Beanstalk and its components. Now, a typical problem with web applications is when a web app runs in a browser and it executes an intensive chunk of code without returning control back to the browser can appear to be frozen to the user. This problem is called blocking, and it happens because the browser is blocked from continuing to handle user input and perform other tasks until the web app returns control of the processor. How AWS Elastic Beanstalk manages this particular problem is basically it creates different environment tiers. There are two environment tiers that are created. First is the web server environment tier, and then the worker environment tier. So AWS Elastic Beanstalk decouples the web application front end from a process that performs the blocking operations, which is a common way to ensure that your application stays responsive under load. If your AWS Elastic Beanstalk application performs operations or workflows that take a long time to complete, these tasks are offloaded to a dedicated worker environment. Now, as you can see, there are many terminologies being used for AWS Elastic Beanstalk. So let's understand them more in detail. First of all, you have the Elastic Beanstalk application. The application is composed of environments, versions, and environment configurations. Environment is a collection of AWS resources that are running an application version. Please remember this important point. Each environment runs only one application version at a time. However, you can run the same application version or different application versions in many environments simultaneously. The environment tier. As you can see, there are two environment tiers over here. When you launch an Elastic Beanstalk environment, you first choose an environment tier. Why? Because the environment tier designates the type of application that the environment runs on, and it determines what resources Elastic Beanstalk provisions to support it. Now, in the web server environment tier, what Elastic Beanstalk provisions is Elastic load balancing and an autoscaling group. And in the worker environment tier, it also provisions the autoscaling group with EC2 instances. There's SQS queue running over here. However, in this environment tier, you do not need Elastic load balancing. So the difference in the environment tier determines the kind of resources that are provisioned by Elastic Beanstalk. An application that serves HTTP requests runs in the web server environment tier, as shown over here in this image from AWS, and a backend environment that pulls tasks from an Amazon Simple Queue service queue runs in a worker environment tier. Environment configuration identifies a collection of parameters and settings that determine how an environment and its associated resources behave. For example, your Elastic load balancing environment configurations could be a set of parameters such as security group, instance type, and platform versions. The platform itself is a combination of an operating system, a runtime, a web server, application server, and Elastic Beanstalk components. So this gives you an overview of what Elastic Beanstalk does under the hood. Now let's go over some of the essential topics of Elastic Beanstalk for the Solution Architect exam. First topic is scalability, which comes from Domain 2, designing high-performing architectures, and you require to choose the appropriate architecture and service that scale to meet performance requirements. Elastic Beanstalk uses elastic load balancing and auto-scaling to automatically scale your application in and out based on your application's specific needs. Second is high availability, which comes from Domain 1, designing resilient architectures, and how to select a highly available configuration to mitigate single points of failure. Elastic Beanstalk ensures multiple availability zones are given for your application, which ensures you can improve application reliability and availability. The third topic for Elastic Beanstalk is fault tolerance, which comes from Domain 1, designing resilient architectures, where you need to determine the amount of resources needed to provide a fault-tolerant architecture across availability zones. Now, fault tolerance is a very hard to reach concept because it requires that you abstract any failure of your application from your end user. Elastic Beanstalk uses both Amazon CloudWatch and auto-scaling to maintain a fixed number of instances so that damaged ones are replaced by healthy instances. Ensuring that a fixed number of healthy instances are always available ensures that you meet the requirement of fault tolerance, which is ensuring your application is always available even though certain components behind it are failing. With CloudWatch, the client can configure alarms to trigger auto-scaling actions to ensure additional healthy instances are created. The fourth topic that is essential for the exam is security, and it comes from Domain 3, designing secure applications and architecture, and how to select appropriate encryption option for data at rest and transit for AWS services. To protect information flowing between your application and clients, you need to configure SSL. Now you can get a free SSL certificate from AWS Certificate Manager, or you can purchase a SSL certificate from an external certificate authority. When you configure an SSL certificate for your environment, the data is encrypted between the client and environment's Elastic Load Balancing load balancer, and it meets the requirement of Domain 3. Finally, let's go through when to use and when not to use Elastic Beanstalk. The kind of use cases that are supported by Elastic Beanstalk are for startups who want to get an MVP out quickly, which is a minimum viable product. Elastic Beanstalk is a good choice if you want to build web apps where you don't have the sufficient DevOps experience or teams to manage all the activities yourself. It is a good choice if you are having a team and you want to build simple applications. Elastic Beanstalk is not a good choice, and you might want to use CloudFormation, which is infrastructure as a code, which we will cover later, if you are requiring more granular control of your application use case. For example, if your application requires complex worker processes which handle time-consuming tasks such as report generation, database cleanup, then you may want to provision such worker processes more efficiently using CloudStack. Also, if your web application requires a lot of third-party service integrations, in such case, Elastic Beanstalk is not an easy choice to handle complex integrations with third-party service providers. Keeping this in mind, we have completed our overview of Elastic Beanstalk, and in our next video, we will go over AWS Elastic Load Balancing. So, if you like this video, please hit the like button, please do subscribe, and keep watching our videos. Thank you.